Hi there, my name's Amanda. We're here at Blists Hill Victorian Town today. We're going to have a little look around, so let's go and find someone who can tell us all about it. Hi Lauren, how are you doing?
I'm right, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. I was hoping you'd just tell us a little bit about Blists Hill Victorian Town and why it's here and what goes on.
Okay, so Blists Hill Victorian Town, it's an open air living history museum. We're set in the year 1900 in the East Shropshire coalfield, which is basically modern day Telford. We look at how working class people lived and worked in this area in the Victorian era.
That sounds really interesting, so where are we going to start?
If we start in the bank, just here.
Excellent.
So, welcome to the bank.
It's nice and warm in here.
Yes, it is nice and warm. So this is what a bank would have looked like in this area at the end of the Victorian era.
Different to today?
Yes, very different. It was mostly for wealthy people. You wouldn't have got so many working class people here. The banks dealt in pounds, not pennies. You can also exchange your money here today. So if you've got a little bit of change,
I've got £5. What can I get for that?
You can get a shilling halfpenny.
Really? Doesn't sound much.
No, but it'll get you a lot here.
Oh right, that's good to know.
So we've got these large ones here are pennies, a bit different to our pennies today. And then here we've got a sixpence, and then we've also got here a farthing.
Right, it's a bit like being on holiday abroad.
Yes.
So where can I go to spend this money?
You can go to lots of our exhibits like the Groceries or the chemists or the sweet shop.
Sweet shop. Let's make our way to the sweet shop and visit a few places on the way.
Brilliant.
So where are we now then, Lauren?
So this is the Grocers, and this shop, it's a copy of an original shop owned by the Owen family. And it was originally on Market Street in Oaken Gates.
Okay, and what kind of things do we sell here?
So lots of dried goods, basic cleaning products, things you'd need day to day, and also the staple tea.
Ah, very important to have a cup of tea.
Yes. So the tea was stored in these little jars or caddies up the top there, and they are different grades of tea. That's what the different numbers mean.
Okay, so number 1 more important than number 5, or the other way around?
Number 1's the most important.
Okay, most expensive.
Most expensive, yes. So you'd come in here and you'd ask for whatever tea you could afford, and then it would be weighed out for you on the scales.
Okay.
And it would be packaged in one of these, depending on how much tea you wanted. You get a pound of tea in this one, half a pound and a quarter pound, and this is how you package them. You take the middle piece out of the mould and you wrap the paper around it. Once you've weighed your tea out, you need to make a bag to put your tea in. Fold it in at the bottom like a parcel, and use gum arabic to glue the bottom and the sides. You place it back into the outside piece of the mould, you fold the top over, and there's your bag.
That was really interesting, Lauren. Where are we going to go to next?
We'll go to the pharmacy next door.
Oh, brilliant, good. Well, what a treasure trove there is in here. What kind of things can you tell me about in the pharmacy?
So in the pharmacy, people would have come here for all their medicines and health supplies. Back in 1900, most people couldn't afford to go to a doctor, at least most working people couldn't afford it. So you'd come here to get a diagnosis from the pharmacist. So the pharmacist had to be very professional, very confidential, and it was increasingly professionalised. There was a proper society that they had to join, they had to be properly trained, so it wasn't quack doctors or anything like that here.
We've moved on a bit then from images.
Yes, it's very professional. And they would tell you what was wrong with you, and then they would try to sell you either something they made themselves, so their own ointment or cure, or you could buy a branded cure, which is becoming more and more of a thing by 1900.
Okay, so what kind of thing have we got that's branded? What's that green one there?
So we've got Zambuk here, so this was an antiseptic ointment that you can come in and buy. So the pharmacist might have their own, or you might specifically trust Zambuk and ask for Zambuk. And then as well as selling medicines and things like that, they also sold treatments for animals. So like we've got horse conditioning powders just over there.
Don't get that mixed up with your Zambuk.
Exactly. And also some chemicals for photography. So if you're keen photography, you come here to get some of your chemicals for developing photos. They sold products for infants and babies, for people who were like terminally ill. and spectacles. We also have they would act as an optician.
I bet I might next time I need my eyes testing.
Yes, so you can get your eyes tested here and they give you a pair of glasses. And we've also got a dentist in our pharmacy as well. So you get a visiting dentist every week or so.
Might not try that one out.
Yes, I wouldn't recommend it.
No. I recognise some things in here. Could this be a post office?
Yes, you're right. So the post office at the end of the Victorian era was really a hub of the community, and obviously it's somewhere you come to send letters, receive letters, just send messages out into the world.
Okay.
And people could really do this because the literacy rates were rising really quickly in the Victorian era. So at the start of the era, most people couldn't even write their own name. We know this from marriage records where you have to sign your name. Most people, especially working people, couldn't do that, and that's because education was so poor. But in the 1870s and 1880s, there were various education acts that made school both compulsory and free. So more people were learning to write, so more people could write letters, more people wanted to post letters and communicate with friends and family outside of their own town. So the post office became a really important part of the community. It was also helped by the fact that there was a couple of reforms, revolutions in communication. So you've got the postage stamp, penny post, brought in the 1840s, and that made sending a letter cheap and affordable for most people.
Quite a few pennies in my pocket,
yes.
So I can send some
You
letters.
can send quite a few letters with the money you've got. And then in the 1870s, there's also the electrical telegraph. The post office takes it over. So the electrical telegraph, most people know Morse code, SOS, ... That's a telegraph.
Right. A whole letter like that.
You could send a short. You could have to send 12 words.
Okay.
For a small cost.
Just think about what you want to say.
Yes, you've got to be very specific. And you could send a message over really, really long distances with that. So where a letter might take a couple of months to get to Australia, by 1900, when we've got the telegraph system reaching Australia, it would take only a few hours.
That's quite an improvement.
Yes.
Can we have a go?
Yes, go ahead. So we have a little leaflet here that helps you decode Morse code.
Okay,
so,
how does it work?
So Morse code, the alphabet is replaced by dots and dashes. So a dot is like that, and a dash like that. And using dots and dashes, you can send different letters, and then the letters obviously make words, and the words make a sentence. So would you like to have a go at maybe sending your name?
Okay, we'll see what we can do. This could take a while. Dot, dash, 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 dot, dash, dash, dot, dash, dot, dot, dash.
There you go.
Excellent. You mentioned in the post office that there was a rise in literacy in the Victorian period. Is that why we've got a school here?
Yes, so this school was brought to the museum from Sturtley, which is only a couple of miles away, and it was built in 1880, and that was because of an Education Act passed in 1870 that set up boards that decided if your area needed a school. So in Sturtley there wasn't enough schools for all the children, so they built this one. And at the time, it would have had about 90 students.
90?
90.
In here?
In this space, yes. They were very overpopulated and they were told off for it a lot. But they carried on teaching the children of the area, and they'd have had a headmistress who in 1900 was called Mrs. McCallum, and she had an assistant schoolmistress helping her, who was called Priscilla, and then she would have had a couple of pupil teachers, so they were like teacher apprentices. That's how teacher training worked back then. And so between them, they had to control all of these children and teach all the different age groups, lots of different subjects, all at the same time.
Oh, that sounds crazy.
Yes.
How did they keep them all under control?
Very, very strict discipline. So obviously you've got the cane over there. So there was physical punishment, but it was
Really?
Yeah, you get to
now.
Yeah, you'd be too scared. So it actually wasn't used that often from our log.
Just there as a threat.
It's mainly a threat. It was used sometimes, and it was made a big show of when it was. You'd be just too scared to do anything.
Definitely have behaved myself.
Yes.
Well, I definitely recognise where we are now, and this is the one I've been waiting for. Why have we got a sweet shop here?
So sweets in the Victorian era, well, at the start of the era, they were quite expensive and a luxury for rich people really. Poor people really wouldn't have had much sugar or sweets in their diet. But by the end of the era, with mass production and falling costs of sugar, it's an affordable treat for most people. A child could afford to have a small treat of sweets every now and again. Would you like to choose something to try?
Yeah, what's the most Victorian sweet I can choose?
So we have herbal tablets, they're probably the most Victorian.
I'll try some herbal tablets.
So a small bag would be threepence.
So that was a penny. So I need 3 of those. I don't have 3 of those.
No, but you do have a threepence.
Oh, it's complicated.
And that's threepence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've had a good wander around the shops and what looks like the streets of the town. Where are we now?
So where we're stood at the moment, you can actually see quite a few original features of this site. So lots of people think of Blists Hill Victorian Town as being the place with shops and the schools and the houses. But way before it was a museum, this was actually an industrial site. So the earliest part of our site is the mine that's just here, which was sunk in the 1780s by a man called William Reynolds. And he was mainly mining for the coal and ironstone that would have been under our feet. And there was also a little bit of clay, but that comes into the story a bit later. So you've got the coal and ironstone coming out of the mine here, but he needs a way to transport it. At the time, the roads were really poor, they were in terrible condition, it would take you a long time to get even a short distance.
Okay.
So they built canals.
Ah.
The canals were more or less like the motorways of their day. They were the fastest form of transportation. And this one here was built in 1792 to transport the stuff coming out of the mine. And if you go in that direction, you end up coming to the Hay Incline Plane. And that is some rails on the hill that takes you down to the river. If you get down to the river, then you can go off on the River Severn, pretty much off to Gloucester and Bristol, and pretty much anywhere you like from there. So you've got the canal and the Hay Incline Plane improving the transportation from Blists Hill, and you've got the coal and the ironstone coming out of the mine. Where is it going? It's mostly going to local blast furnaces, where they're producing pig iron used in the local iron industries. So initially it was going off to other places, but eventually they ended up building blast furnaces at Blists Hill, which are on the bottom half of our site. And they were built in the 1830s and 1840s. And again, they were producing pig iron. And the final feature of our site that was built was this brick and tile works, which was built in the 1870s. And that was built to take advantage of the clay that I mentioned that was also coming from the mine. So obviously we've got our iron industries, we've got our brick and tile industry, and we've got our mine. And this site was at its peak, we think, in the mid-19th century, when we think about 700 people working here.
Wow.
Yes, so it was very noisy, very smoky and smelly and dirty. Really not a nice place to be.
No.
There weren't really any houses, there was only one row of houses, which was just over in that direction where our coach is parked today, who comes to the museum. It was just a row of 15 houses, and the people who lived there mostly worked on the site. So that's the site's peak, but when our museum is set in 1900, this site is already starting to go into decline. The iron industries are starting to collapse, there's cheaper imports of iron from other countries, and steel has started to be produced, which is cheaper and generally a better material to use. The mine by this point has run out of the coal and ironstone, so they're having to import it from other places as well. So the blast furnaces are struggling. The mine's only producing clay at this point. The brick and tile works is probably the strongest industry that they still had. The blast furnaces stay open until 1912 when they shut after a miners' strike. The canal and Hay Incline Plane are closed really by 1900 because the railways are just cheaper and faster. The mine lasts till the 1940s.
Quite long lasting.
Yes, and our longest lasting overall was the brick and tile works, which closed in the 1950s.
Right.
And that was really the end of Blists Hill's industrial past.